All right, hello, real closers. Welcome back to another Power Hour every Monday. Today we're having a really nice topic. How do you hold your ISA accountable? We've talked about when do you need an ISA? When do you know when you need an ISA? We talked about the importance of having an ISA added to your team to, explode your business. But now, how do you once you hire them, once you have them in your team, how do you hold them accountable? And that's a tough, tough, tough one. Why don't we go into it, Gustavo?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Roberto. Glad to be here back at Power Hour. The way I address this topic, and by the way, you're right. It's not easy to do. It is probably the number one reason people don't get the result they want with their ISA, right? That there's a lack of accountability. There's a lack of accountability, and I have empathy for that, right? Because for a lot of folks, having an ISA might be the first time they manage someone on like a salesperson that they're managing. The first time they manage a salesperson, right? And the fact that most ISAs, it's like a salaried staff position, but it's also sales, right? And when you hold someone accountable in a sales role, sales is about results, right? That's ultimately what it should be about. And I think a lot of folks struggle with that, right? Like, hey, at what point do they demand results from this person? How do they do that? How do they do it consistently? And how do you have not just hold them accountable to a bare minimum? How do you have a high performing culture, right, in your company? How do you even do that? How do you get started? And the way that I like to think about it, right, is that there are different levels, okay? Different levels. And we want to start at level one, like table stakes, the basic stuff. What we recommend people do with their ISA, level one, the very basic stuff, is use time tracking software because they are a staff position. They are a salaried position. So we recommend using a tool like Screenio, using a tool that just helps your ISA because most of them are working virtually. The ones that we work with are working virtually, either in the US, outside the US, Mexico, Philippines, South America, Latin America. A lot of them are working all over the place, right? So a lot of folks are used to having people on their team, right? An admin or another agent in the office with them, okay? So there's a certain level of accountability that you might not even know you need or that you have just by seeing the other person arrive on time, sitting next to you, making some calls, doing some work in front of you, okay? When you're virtual, things change. And I think a very basic level of accountability should be, hey, are you checking in on time into the job? Are you putting in the work? Are you putting in the hours? Okay. That's a very basic level. I think everyone should start there. A lot of people don't do this. A lot of people don't do this. And they're kind of surprised they don't get the result that they want, right? Start with a very basic level of accountability. Are you getting into the job on time? Are you checking in on time? Everyone that's salaried, everyone that's staff in your company has to show up on time and put in the work, okay? Put in their hours. It's that priority number, not even priority number one, priority number zero. Like I said, it's table stakes, right? That's the bare minimum you should be asking people to do. Because if they're not doing that, Roberto, showing up late, leaving early, not putting in the time, it's going to be impossible for them to do everything else, okay? For me, that's like the bare minimum people should do. Level one, only at level one, okay? That's the foundation.
And usually when you see those things come up in the first, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, those are really red flags.
Huge red flags. Huge red flags because if someone is, I don't even think someone should be last a week on your team. If they're not showing up on time, if they're not putting in the hours and you have the evidence right in front of you. It's a lot easier to tell when they're in the office with you. Using a virtual tool can make it as easy as that, okay? You got to have the right tooling in place to make sure you understand that because you're right. If that's an early issue you're having, holy cow, even if they sound great on the phone, great personality, great everything, they're not putting in the work in the first week, forget the first week, the first 30 days, this is a really bad sign. It's only going to go downhill from there. We'll tell you that. It's only going to go down. That's just the tip of the iceberg of the issues you can have with somebody like that, right? So hold them accountable to that standard. It's a very low standard, and they got to arrive on time. They got to put in the work. They got to show improvement, get better. The first 30 days is not so much about where they're starting from. It's about showing improvement. That's the best indicator of success, that they get better very quickly. It's not actually where they start, okay? It's where how fast they can get better because they're all terrible when they start. Everyone at every new job, they just don't know what they're doing yet. Once they figure things out, get their bearings, okay, they can start to make progress, right? But it all starts with that accountability of putting in the work, okay? Number one. There's level number two, okay? This is the next level. And this is where I think it becomes important to talk about metrics, okay? That isn't just time, more than just time. This is about the 3 basic metrics that every ISA should track on a daily basis and that you should hold accountable. At least once a week, sit down with them and review these numbers with them. At least once a week. When they're getting started, it's every day. Okay, it's every day, even if it's only 5 minutes. Ask them about these numbers and what you can do to improve them. And those are calls, contacts, and conversions. That's it, right? Calls, contacts, and conversions. Okay, where they call, how many people they call, how many conversations they get from that, even if it's a hang up, even if they just didn't want to talk to them, they said no, that's a contact, right? That's someone you spoke to. Okay, and the reason that's important is because that number should also be increasing little by little as well, right? Because if they're not talking to enough people, it doesn't matter what they say or how good they are at saying it. They got to talk to enough people on a daily basis. Got to track that. And sometimes the tools are okay at this. I haven't found that they're actually very good at this because a lot of tools, they count a voicemail as a contact because it didn't hang up. Wasn't an invalid number. It was a valid number and someone's talking on the other end. Yeah, but it's a robot, right? So we don't count those as contacts. We do count people that hang up as a contact. That's some very clear feedback on what they thought of the call, right? They hung up. So track those numbers and then conversions. How many nurtures did they get? Qualified seller leads, booked appointments with buyers or with sellers. How many of those did they get during that day, right? And for the big cold calling campaigns like circle prospecting, shout out, we're doing a big circle prospecting boot camp right now with Power ISA. The metric is converted qualified seller leads. That's the key metric we're tracking with a campaign like that. If we're talking about Facebook, Google ads, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, we are talking about attended appointments. That's the metric that we want, right? How many attended appointments were you able to get for the team, okay? So you want to make sure you understand what metric we're talking about. So figure that out and track it on a daily basis. Every day you can have wild swings, you can. So it's always good to look at this at a weekly stretch at least. And as the ISA gets more mature in the company, you can expand it at 30 days. Or like I like to do with my teams, like a 90-day rolling average, right? Where are we at for that month? Now with my teams, I do this with a more seasoned ISAs, more seasoned teams. We look at the month and then a 90-day rolling average. What have we done for this month? What did we do the last 90 days? Okay. So that comes with more time and more experience. When you're just getting started, keep it simple. Every day, calls, contacts, and conversions. And if folks are interested with some help on that, we have a free giveaway this week. Drop a comment below and I will send you for free our ISA monthly accountability tracker where they can keep track of their calls, contacts, and conversions on a daily basis. And it rolls up all the conversion numbers and all the stats for the month for you automatically, right? Like no problem with that. Great, easy, love it. So definitely try something like that. Use something like that if you need some help with this, but it's simple, folks. Keep it as simple as possible. When you're getting started, simple is better. How many calls they make, how many contacts do they make, how many conversions they get at the end of the day, right? You would be shocked, Roberto, if I told you how many people don't do this, how many people kind of ignore that a little bit. And I think there's a couple different reasons for that. Number one, they don't want to be that guy, right? They don't want to be on, oh, I don't want to breathe down their neck. I don't want to, just be that guy looking at numbers, number crunching. I want to be a nice boss, right? I want to be a cool boss. Hey, just give me appointments and then I don't care about anything else. Just give me those appointments. Who cares, right? So, and you're kind of laughing at this. And I know because the reality is coming. People need more than that, okay? People need more than that. If you're kind of just leaving it up to them, they might lead you astray, right? They might not know how to get those appointments at the end of the day. Well, I'll tell you how. They got to reach out to enough people, got to talk to enough of them. And then if their scripting and their objection handling is on point, they'll convert a lot of those, right? At the end of the day.
And even when you mentioned the screen monitoring, right? Sometimes it's like, oh man, I don't want them to think that I'm gonna be watching them
I don't want to be
all
Big
the
Brother.
time,
I don't want to be that guy, or that girl. I don't want to be that boss, right? I don't want to be that boss.
That's one of the biggest mistakes. That's one of the biggest mistakes you make when if you're not familiar with hiring people, like you said, if you're not familiar with getting people into your team, not putting that control from the beginning also sets the wrong expectations, I think.
100%. And I've seen this a lot of times. I've seen this, multiple times. And I usually have to kind of cajole and convince agents to not do this. Okay. That's not enough. They actually do need to hold people accountable, because the way you start, right, forming a high performance culture is by tracking these numbers. It's very simple, not easy. It's very simple though, right? How many calls, how many contacts, how many conversions you make, and what are you going to do to improve that number, right? Because it should be here and you might be here. You might be close there. Okay, cool. What are you going to do to get to where you need to be, right? What do you need from me to get to where you need to be? Because you're not where you need to be, right? That's an important, calling that out, making that apparent to the person is important. And when they're just getting started, this is just a natural part of the process. You don't have to berate them. You don't have to be angry about it. That's one mistake. I think people confuse this. Holding someone accountable is not being mad at them. It is not treating them, not being disrespectful, not being mean to them at all, right? In fact, quite the opposite. Holding someone accountable to a high standard, you want them to leave, right? You want them to know you're paying attention and you're there to I see it as you're there to support them. Okay. What do you need from me to get us where we need to go? Okay. And for a lot of new ISAs, it's just time. It's just time and answering their questions and listening to their calls and giving them pointers that they need. Early on, this is the easiest job in the world, Roberto. This is that some people go, oh, what if I listen to a call and I don't know what to do? For new ISAs, this is very obvious. It's not hard to do, okay? For new ISAs, it's very obvious where they need some help. The ISAs will notice just by listening to themselves with you, right? They'll know what they need to do. 90% of the time, the ISA knows exactly what they need to do. You got to help fill in that gap too, right? So you got to hold them accountable that way, listening to some of those calls and making those adjustments. So small adjustments that they need to make. That's what we do, right? And we're working with the ISAs as well. The number one thing we do with ISAs in the first 30 days of training is listen to calls with them, right? Role play with them. Show them what they need to do. It's not just about teaching, classroom, hoping for the best. It's like listening to great calls, listening to not so great calls. What could have been better in that call? Just showing them what they need to do, okay? But it starts with the accountability. They're not going to think they need to improve if they don't know their numbers, not tracking their numbers, right? It's really, really important. And also, if their ISA is completely not, if they're focusing on the wrong activities, right? This is actually very common, Roberto. The ISA might have given them 3 different activities. Oh, you know what? I need to make the calls and to follow up, and I need you to post on social a couple of materials. That's very common. Right? Can you post this on social for our Facebook page or for whatever, Instagram, whatever it is? Okay, great. And they can go full on the social media part because that's fun, that's entertaining, that's interesting. Oh, that's cool. It like liking other people's posts, friending people, and half the time was spent making calls only, right? And you wouldn't notice that unless you're keeping track of those numbers, okay? Like, hey, how come you only did 20, 30 calls today? And I see this on my coaching calls, right? Sometimes. And I say only 20 calls. Okay, what did they do the rest of the time? I'm not sure. Ask them. Ask them, right? And communicate the standard to them very clearly, right? Hey, Mr. ISA, if you didn't make extending appointments, I expect you to do 200 calls a day, right? Because you didn't hardly spoke to anybody, make more calls. That'll get you talking to more people quickly. Okay, let's make that adjustment. If you're having a lot of good conversations, 100 to 150 might be fine, right? Calls per day, right? A single line dialer, like a Facebook scenario. This is not circle prospecting. So let's not confuse the two. But you have to have a standard that they have to meet on a daily basis. Make it simple for them. Make it simple for them. That's that level 2 accountability. Level 2 accountability. Anyone is capable of doing this. Okay, anyone. You can use our monthly tracker. You can use Post-it notes for all I care, right? Just make sure you're tracking this and you're holding them accountable to a standard. And if they're not meeting it, right, it's because they're new and they need to be closer and closer every week. That's okay. But if they're not meeting it, you have to understand why they're not meeting it. Understand why. And if you don't understand, reach out to a coach, reach out to us. I'd love to help out, right? What's the issue? Roberto, this is pretty scary, pretty crazy. But just by hearing those 3 numbers for an ISA, calls, contacts, and conversions, I can tell almost what they're calling, not just whether they're doing well or bad. I can almost guess what they're calling, and I can tell you if they're doing good or they're doing bad, right off the bat, 100%. And then the only thing that's missing is listening to the calls. But just from those numbers, I can get a pretty rough idea where you're at, right? If you're where you need to be, or you need to bump it up and work harder, okay? I can almost guess, I've been doing this for so long. So if you're not sure what to do with this information, reach out to someone, right? Where is my ISA where they need to be?
And if you're not tracking those numbers, like Gustavo said, he's gonna, if you put a comment in wherever you get seeing this, he's gonna get you a spreadsheet or a system where you can put in all the numbers and then send it back to him and have him check it out.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. You start tracking it. That's step number one. Starting to track it is step number one, but we can do way better than that, right? So step number one. But I'm sorry, it's not, well, step number one, level two, it's called that. Level one is just tracking their time, making sure they're held accountable to that. Level two, tracking their daily activity, calls, contacts, conversions. And then there's a third level, okay? There's a third level of accountability, right? And this is a more advanced one, right? This is where a more advanced we're managing what I call like a sales team management. And most sales teams are not run well. It's called that, right? Most sales teams are not run well. But the ones that are run well use a level of accountability that is above just tracking your time, that is above just tracking your activities. It's what I call group accountability, okay? For me, that's the sign of a high-performing team. That it's not just the manager getting them into a room, because a lot of these conversations, the first two levels are one-on-one. That's where they should happen. That's where it's appropriate to share that feedback, to share that improvement. That's where those conversations should happen, one-on-one conversations, 100%. That's not the only level of accountability. The manager, one-on-one with the teammate. It is among the team itself. The team itself is holding each other accountable, right? And this can usually happens in the format of like a sales meeting, okay? A group meeting, a team meeting, where you talk about performance. It's not just rah, here's where the market's at, here's where we are. No, it's like, hey, Roberto, hey, Gus, what were your numbers last week? Okay, great. What are your numbers going to be this week? All right, you're not on track for that. What are you going to do to catch up, right? And make it public, okay? Make it public, speak it into existence. And everyone around the room, what's one suggestion you would make over here to Gus to help them make up for the numbers we didn't meet last week, okay? What do you suggest they do to get them back on track? Make it a group event. And if they get that win, if they get that, celebrate that as a group. And if someone's not meeting the standard, make it public. Help them out as a team, Easier said than done, right? This is not something that happens just by having a good team meeting. You've got to build it up with the first two levels first, okay? First two levels are where it's at. And then you can start to aspire to have a group accountability stage. Because you have to have the right people on the bus to have a great group and team accountability, okay? But that's it. Those are the three levels. Time tracking, daily activity tracking, team level tracking, where the individual is held accountable to the team and by the team, not just the manager, right? So those are the three levels. And folks, if you need help with this, comment below and I'll send you our free ISA monthly accountability tracker. So your ISA can track their daily activities and you can get all the monthly stats in one single place.
And I mean, just before we go here, I mean, our team has gone through a few ISAs, right? We've gone through,
you know what it's like.
And it is not just adding an ISA is not just like adding someone that's going to handle a task for you. You're just going to set it, forget it, and get results from that, right? Like one of the things that you brought up earlier is like, as long as you're getting me the appointments, that's fine. But the thing is, if you don't set the right expectations from the beginning, and if you do get some appointments and maybe the ISA is good on the phone.
Well, you just got lucky, who knows, right? You're not even sure.
Right. And the thing is, they get 1-2 appointments in the day. It's like, oh, he's happy, but they're only putting like 2-3 hours worth of work. Imagine the level of productivity you can have if you were actually tracking your numbers for that specific ISA, and also understanding the expectations that they need to have from you and the other way around in order to get those results, right? So absolutely track your numbers. I can attest to that 100%. Tracking numbers, like being accountable, monitoring the ISAs, it's definitely, what you need to do, what you have to do if you're going to add someone to your team like that, especially if it's remote.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Because, having someone on your team, it's expecting them to perform because, you hope so and you think so. And Gus said that ISAs are great. We need your help here, right? Power ISA can build you a great team. You got to hold them accountable, right? And this goes, and Roberto, this is a great topic because it goes way beyond just ISA. This applies to everyone on your team, actually. I focused on the ISA role and we got tactical with the ISA role, but the same principles apply to everyone on your team. Same principles apply. What is the standard you're holding them accountable to, right? Have you even communicated the standard, let alone hold them accountable? Does everyone on your team know what are the numbers? What are the goals? We have more of a soft skill, a different kind of a role. Do they know what they have to do to be successful, right? Okay, what standard are you holding them accountable to? What could you do there, right? So I think it's a really important question to ask. Anyone that runs a team should have to hold them accountable. But guess what? Maybe you're a solopreneur, you're a solo agent doing this on your own. What standard are you holding yourself accountable to, right? So I think there's many angles to this topic. It's a great topic. We're starting with this one, the 3 levels of accountability for your ISA. And if you need help with that, let us know.
Sounds good, Gustavo. Thank you so much for stopping by again. We'll see you again next Monday. Have a good
All
one.
right, thanks.